Hello, this is Justin Ruger from Accessible Beekeeping. We're here with our co-host Jonathan. How are you doing, Jonathan?
Good.
And we're here with our guest Laura. How are you, Laura?
I'm well, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and how you came to fall in love with beekeeping like the rest of us?
Yes, so I'm Laura, and I have a background in actually genocide prevention. And I've done a lot of genocide prevention work through the lens of death and disability. Um, and I came to fall in love with beekeeping through homesteading on my own property, as well as engagement with the native bee population in Cambodia, where I was working before coming back to the States and actually starting my own apiary.
Before we started the broadcast, you were telling us about how the bees actually make their comb in Cambodia. Would you like to tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was there doing work, I noticed that the bees operate and work and engage with their environment a little bit differently than they do here in the US. They will build these massive, beautiful comb on the branches of the trees. And so it's just this big, like almost curtain like honeycomb, and it's all over. So as you're walking through the jungle or the forest, you're just walking through these curtains of honeybees and comb, and it's really hard to not just fall in love with the sound of the buzzing, which is always seems so content and peaceful, and just the beauty of these hives and comb.
So you're studying genocide right now,
I am, yes.
and you're almost done with your PhD.
I'm hoping to be almost done with my PhD, yes.
I don't know how you balance your time between PhD and homesteading.
And working full time. Yeah, I don't know. I just keep going and hope for the best.
Obviously, this is a podcast about disabilities and how we overcome our disabilities. I was happy that you reached out to us, but would you like to tell our listeners about your disability and how it affects you?
Yeah, so I have Charcot-Marie tooth, also known as CMT. It is a neurological disorder that I was born with, and it affects how my nerves function within my body that leads to muscle atrophy, pain, lots of fatigue, and lack of balance when I'm walking. Fine motor skills are also sometimes a challenge, especially when I'm tired. Um, and yeah, what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
You are. I think you already answered it all about how it affects you.
Oh, yep, answered it.
What would you say the hardest part of beekeeping is for you?
The hardest part of beekeeping, I think, is lifting the heavy equipment, such as the boxes with frames that are full of honey and brood. And that is hard in the sense of not only is it physically hard, but I don't want to disturb or harm the bees in any more way than I need to when I am doing a hive inspection. As well as, you know, the balance of actually carrying these heavy things. Fatigue gets in the way sometimes, so I really have to plan around hive inspections, how I'm feeling that day. Try to do it. For me, it's earlier in the morning where I have more energy, and also after getting through one hive inspection, depending on how deep I was invited into the hive, um, you know, taking a moment to be like, do I have the energy to do another inspection on another hive, or is that it for today? And I plan for, you know, another inspection another day.
How many hives do you have currently?
Currently, I have two. I've been keeping up with two because I wanted to start with at least two so I can kind of compare how they're both working. Um, and developing, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't taking on too much for the sake of the bees. And so I think I've learned enough in the last 3 years to want to expand a little bit more, but currently I'm still at two.
And what is your future goal in maybe number of hives?
Ooh, I don't know how to answer that because it's so hard once you get drawn into the bees world. It's hard to say, like, put a number on that. Oh, I would like quite a few more and see how that goes, and then kind of revisit that idea afterwards. So I can't put a number on it right now.
So maybe multiples of five, basically.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
What is your favorite part of beekeeping?
Sitting with the bees. My favorite part is just going out and sitting by the hive and having them come and go and land on me and pass me by, and just listening to the buzzing and learning about, what's going on in the hive just by watching the entrance and seeing who's coming and who's going and what's going in and what's coming out. That's probably my favorite.
When you started beekeeping, you were already well into your PhD, correct?
Yes.
How did you manage your time for somebody who has a disability who may be working or not able to work but just overwhelmed? How did you manage your time for your hive inspections, other than early in the morning and um, maybe more than one day? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah. So for me, what I found worked was when I would spend that time sitting with the bees and watching the entrance and getting that information. That for me told me when I did and didn't need to really be breaking into their hive and looking at what's going on. And so for me, and I know every beekeeper is different, but I'm definitely a more hands-off person. It could be my personality, my disability, my time. But I tend to not do deep invasive hive inspections very often. It's once every couple of months, or if I'm seeing something change when I'm sitting out there with them, if their buzzing sounds different, or the numbers of bees coming and going look different, if I'm seeing a lack of pollen come in, then I might do an inspection more frequently. And so then it's literally just figuring out those times that I have. And sometimes it's about making the time because that is that place where I can put all the other stuff aside, because you have to put all that other stuff aside to go into the hives. Because the bees deserve your full attention when you're getting into their home. And so sometimes it's making that time because I too need it. And so I think that looks different for everybody. But yeah, I think it's really looking at what's going on in your life, when those moments are available, and when those moments need to be made available.
You said you homestead, correct?
I do, yes.
And you have animals on your homestead that require your attention every day.
They do, yes.
So I guess it's really important to. I mean, bees are nice that you don't have to go in there every day.
Yeah.
And, and that helps make it possible to keep bees along with your. How about you, Jonathan? Do you have anything for Laura?
I don't think you really elaborated too much about it. What's your method of inspecting your hive with your disability?
Yeah. So my method of inspecting the hive with my disability is, again, the front entrance, sitting with them. That's a big part of my inspection. And then kind of just lifting the top, seeing what's going on in the top frames and in that top box, and maybe taking out a couple frames and looking at those frames. And depending on what that's telling me, if I need or if I'm invited to go deeper into the hives, because sometimes we know the bees are like, not today, and you just close them up and walk away. Because I'm not running anywhere, so I'm walking. So I try not to make them too mad. So if I'm invited to go deeper, it's getting a frame stand and taking each frame out, keeping it in order as they came out, and then moving the box aside and then going in deeper. It's a little bit more invasive and probably more uncomfortable for the bees, but again, I can't lift an actual box. And so it's been about having that conversation with the bees, which so far has gone well, and doing it piece by piece, and then putting it back together piece by piece.
And you do all one stuff. Any plans for any other hive types that you're going to use for maybe more convenient for your disability?
Yeah, I've been looking into top bar hives. There's this other one that was like a tree trunk hive that essentially you put in the tree. So I've been looking at those two, and then maybe some of the kind of old school kind of like, it looks like straw type hives and barrel hives. I don't think any of those are big on honey production, but they are big on like bees. And so for me, it's been it went into being about honey, and it's now moved more into the bee tending stage of having bees.
So what's your ultimate goal of beekeeping? Are you still wanting honey production, bee conservation, pollination, or a combination thereof?
I think it's a combination of all. Honey is kind of actually the last on my list, but I have been doing a lot of work with using honey in medicinal ways, like infusing different herbs with them, or using just the pure straight honey for some people that have allergies. But my biggest thing is probably pollination, conservation, and just maybe a little selfishness of just enjoying having the bees fly around.
They are great joy. You mentioned watching insects. I could spend all day if I had time to do that. Just watch them fly.
Yeah, especially when I have anxiety or somebody has maybe created a space where I've been upset, because the bees, when you enter their space, they will let you know if your energy's off. And so sometimes they really, sitting there helps me also redirect my thoughts and my feelings and kind of reground me.
I've noticed that too. No matter what's on my mind before I go on the bees, it's all on the bees whenever I get in there, and it's very therapeutic.
Absolutely.
You said that you worked with people that suffered genocide.
Yes.
I know through some research that they have used in Somalia, I believe it was, actually beekeeping to provide agriculture work. Is that something that you might bring up in your future endeavors?
Most likely, yes. I've connected with a couple different beekeepers throughout the world that are also using beekeeping as a method for economic growth for women and girls. And that has definitely been something that I've been really interested in being a part of more as I continue my journey in beekeeping and continue my journey with genocide prevention.
What are some of the limitations that you see that some of these people in foreign countries are facing when especially women and children? What are some of the limitations that they face to be able to get beekeeping, to start beekeeping?
I think one of the biggest struggles and challenges that I have found is that a lot of the countries that I've been looking into, don't have like the extension cooperatives that we have. They don't have the beekeeping associations that we have. They don't have mentors. And so there's a real lack of support and knowledge going in. And so they're really having to use the internet to reach out to people from all over the place, to just kind of get started and learn about beekeeping. And, you know, I've talked to one woman who's just started beekeeping in Uganda, and it was like, I don't know the issues that are facing bees in Uganda, right? And so having, I think, a network or a place for them to learn more about the native bee population in those countries and have the same support that we do in the US would be something that is really important.
And that's something that you want to work on, or something that you want to help with? Or have you thought about your plans afterwards?
Yeah, so I would love to help do something like that. So I engage a lot with participatory action research. So that's working alongside community members, and lending the skills of research and networking while they actually build the services and skills and knowledge that is needed within their own communities, because they know their community and their needs best. And so I think one thing I would love to do is create that collaborative process within these places, to support them to build those own networks.
That's fantastic. Do you manage your bees alone, or do you have somebody that helps you?
My daughter and my partner do help me. It took about a year for them to get involved, but they do help me now, and they are my heavy lifters. So that's been really nice, to be able to have people who are like, yeah, no, this is really heavy, even for me, uh, doing that kind of work with me.
If you had to say something to somebody with disabilities that is hesitant about getting into beekeeping, what would you say?
I would say if you're interested in getting into beekeeping, do it. The bees are going to accept you and welcome you no matter what you are bringing to them. Connect with your local beekeeping associations. They may not have not a lot of knowledge on beekeepers with disabilities, but I haven't met a beekeeper yet that would not welcome you into their apiary to, you know, see what the equipment is like, to get into their hives and see, you know, what it's like to do that with your disability, and even talk through different ways of doing things or different products or designs that they've seen. It's a really actually welcoming and open community that you will get thousands of different ideas from.
And 1,000 different answers to the same question.
Yes, which is kind of nice, because then you have a lot more broadness to explore with. Make it yours.
Do you know
Make
who
it
Frank?
your thing.
Yes, make it yours. Do you know who Frank Linton is?
The name is not familiar.
So he writes and runs a blog called Beekeeping with Disabilities.
Okay.
It's actually, I started with beekeeping and disabilities until I found his blog, and then I changed the name of the channel. But he has a list of auditory and visual sensors that are built for managing your honeybees. Have you ever thought about looking into something like that?
I have not, but that sounds like a really interesting thing to look into.
So they have sensors that tell you the moisture level. They have scales that you can put under the four corners of your super, and then it will tell you how much the super weighs, so you can know when it's full, when it says it's like 60 to 80 pounds.
That's amazing, and I think helpful for anybody.
Yeah, so I mean, you seem very in tune with your bees, which is something that I think everybody should get to.
That's my favorite part of it. Yeah, is just being in tune with the bees.
one of the hardest things to do is be prepared. What do you do in the off season that makes your season easier?
For me, it's going through inventory. What do I have? What do I not have? What do I need? What do I want? And taking the time, because A, it's expensive, and B, just the energy level and the time. So in the off season, I can take that time to go through these things, purchase them, and try new things also. But I also spend a lot of that time doing a lot of reading and learning more about bees and what we do know, what we don't know, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and also just that fun side of like the mythology, which I think deepens the connection with them. So it's trying to use that time to just learn more and slowly gather more equipment.
Pretty amazing how equipment disappears as you go to working the bees. I thought whenever I started the season, I had a ton of equipment. I don't have enough.
Right? Absolutely.
Mm.
So there are no advertisements on the show, but do you have a local beekeeping company that you use, or do you order from one of the main catalog companies?
I've ordered a couple things from main categories. Most of the time, my bees, they came from a local beekeeper. And we have some beekeeping association that I'm a part of. And then since I recently moved to Gordonsville, I have found a new company that I use to actually go in person and purchase supplies from.
That's fantastic. So you have found an association?
I have, yeah.
And you recommend that beekeepers join, especially ones with disabilities, join an association?
I do. There's a lot of knowledge and support through associations. I took a beekeeping class through my local association, which I think really set me up with as much success as one can have in your first few years with beekeeping. But, really making sure that I had a mentor that matched with who I was and what I was looking to do with the bees that were on my property. As well as just those local networks that they have with other beekeeping associations. So if they don't have the answer, it's a bunch of bee nerds, right? Who love to talk about bees all the time. And so they have so much knowledge and resources even beyond their own association that I think it is important, if you can, to join an association.
What advice would you give somebody who is struggling, who has a disability, or no, sorry. What advice would you give somebody that's already started and gets a new disability? Someone like me who had a TBI or a stroke and loses the ability to do what they used to be able to do.
So for me, my advice with that is somebody that's was born with and grown up with a disability, is the fact that sometimes you just have to be accepting that the way that you engage with your environment is going to look different than it's how you used to engage with your environment. And I think being able to see that reality and accept that reality allows for a lot more creative possibilities of how to still engage with the things that you love, just a little bit differently. It's okay that you have to engage with the world a little bit differently. We all need to do that.
And one thing that's important is the bees will help you fight any depression you may have as a result of it.
Absolutely. And they're going to accept you exactly as you are in that moment. Or not.
Anything else, Jonathan?
I don't believe I have
Jonathan?
I don't believe so.
Do you have any more questions, Jonathan?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so? Okay. Do you have any last minute advice or anything you'd like to tell our listeners?
Just if you're interested in beekeeping, give it a try and keep working through it. It's a challenge for us all, and just keep working through those challenges and find what works for you, and maybe make beekeeping yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, this is Justin Ruger with the co-host Jonathan and our guest Laura. Be limitless, be different, and continue beekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you.